Hi, my name is Joseph Caprell. We're here at JTech. We're on this vehicle right here that's right above me. We're going to do a minor inspection. First off, when you're underneath the vehicle, wear safety glasses. If you are a lot taller than I am, probably want to wear a helmet or something just so you don't hit your head. But anyways, depending on where you work or where you start off at, they're going to give you a piece of paper of what to check for a minor inspection. So on ours that we have, the first thing that you're going to check underneath the vehicle is you're going to check the drive shaft, make sure there's no play in the caps, make sure they're good and tight, make sure there's no play movement, make sure that it's greased right here. While you're underneath the vehicle, you want to grease all grease spots. Another thing you want to check is your exhaust underneath. Make sure if it's either bolted or welded, make sure either one is either loose or cracked. Make sure there's no big holes or anything like that inside the exhaust. Make sure that there's no leaks and the exhaust fumes are coming up from out the stack instead of underneath the cab, because of course, if you're sitting there idling or at a brake light, all that fumes is getting up underneath the cab and possibly going up inside the cab, and you'll start breathing that in. It's not good. You can pass out or anything like that and possibly kill somebody or kill yourself. But anyways, another thing while you're down here, if you have the tires off or anything like that, of course you would check the tire tread, you would check the brake thickness. You would make sure that the brake movement travel, or the arm of traveling distance for the brakes is proper. Another thing when you're underneath here, you would check, make sure your rear diff is good and full. There's no leaks or anything like that. Make sure that make sure it's properly filled at the proper level. Another thing, check your leaf springs, make sure there's no cracks or anything like that. Just do visual inspection on those. Make sure your tire tread is good. And then if you go up front, you would check, make sure all your fluids are, make sure there's no leaks, no power steering, brake fluid, make sure there's no oil, no transmission leak. If you got a PTO, make sure that none of your lines or anything like that are leaking. Make sure the lines are secured and away from the exhaust or anything that can possibly puncture the lines, because the hydraulic fluid in them is very flammable, so be careful with that. Another thing while you're underneath here, you would want to check make sure there's nothing hanging, so it's not dragging against the ground or anything. While you're underneath here, you check your front suspension, and of course all your suspension, your front end alignment, your tie rod ends, your pitman arm, your slack adjuster, and all that. Make sure that they're fully greased. And the way to tell if you got a good grease is when you keep pumping it until you see the brand new grease that you put inside of it starts to come out. Once it starts to come out, you stop, wipe the old grease off, because if you leave the old grease on there, it could possibly go somewhere that doesn't need grease, and grease shouldn't be there, or it could cake up and you can't find a bolt when you're trying to take something off. A lot of possibilities can go wrong if you don't wipe the grease off. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to do a walk around on the vehicle real quick. So first thing is you would check your batteries, make sure that there's no corrosion or anything on them, make sure the cables are good. Once you do that, you check the steps, make sure they're good, sturdy and all that. Make sure your gas tank isn't loose or anything. As you can tell, the air lines on this one for the trailer are not on this one, so If they were, you would check, make sure that there's no cuts in the lines, make sure that they're insulated still. You would take both airlines, look at the rubber piece, the rubber grommet on them, make sure that they're not ripped or anything like that, make sure there's no cracks, make sure they're good. You would, on the handle to climb up inside the cab, check that, make sure it's not loose, won't fall off when you're going to try to pull up, so they don't fall backwards. Check your mirrors, make sure they're not wiggling, make sure that's all good. And once you get done on this side, you climb in, turn on all your lights, your headlights, your blinkers, your reverse lights. And when you do that, that's when you go do your walk around. When you're doing your walk around, of course, you would check your marker lights, check your front lights, check your blinkers, check. Make sure your high beams work, your running lights, and while you're over on this side, you would check your brake fluid, your power steering, and depending on which side your oil dipstick is on, you would check that as well. And then let's walk on the other side. When you're up front, check your front bumper, make sure nothing's loose. Check your hood, make sure there's nothing loose. And of course, if your front hubs have a little clear piece up front for lubrication, you would pull that off, make sure that there's enough fluid inside of it. Or if you have cleared the clear ones where you can actually just see in it and actually see the fluid, then you're good. While you're over here, you check coolant, check transmission, check your mud flaps, make sure they're good, check the tires, make sure there's no play or anything like that. Make sure there's no grinding noise in the bearings. You walk over here, you do the same thing, check the steps, check the fuel tank, check the mirrors, check your antenna, make sure that's not loose, check your handle, and walk towards the back. Make sure, of course, nothing's leaking, make sure your axle's not leaking. You look inside the rim, make sure your hub's not leaking, which you would be able to tell because it'd be really either wet or a lot of dirt buildup. And another thing you need to check is DOT inspection for the tires. Make sure that these ain't out of date. You would check, make sure there's no rubber missing. You would check tire pressure. If it's at 60 psi, or all right, say if this tire is at 110 psi cold, if it is at 50%, half of that, which is 55. So if it's at 55, you have to automatically replace that tire due to DOT inspection. So you have to make sure that all tire pressure is good. You come to the rear. You would check your brake lights, your turn signals, your reverse light. And of course, if you had a trailer hitch, you would check that as well, make sure that's good. And while you're back here, you would get a visual look if you had air ride suspension. You would be able to see that as well. And as you can tell, this is bent and broke, so that'll have to get replaced. Other than that, that's pretty much it. That's how you do a minor inspection. Hope you learned something.